Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video we will be talking about a new poll from the state of Iowa from a pollster known as the most accurate in the United States of America that shows Donald Trump with a huge lead over Joe Biden at 50% of the vote, and 18% lead over Biden, who is at 32%, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is at 9%, and Chase Oliver, the Libertarian nominee, who is at 2%. Now, you might be wondering, what is the significance of this? It's Iowa. Why is this so important? Iowa, especially after the 2020 election, Iowa became a state not really regarded as competitive in presidential elections. In the 2020 election, it voted for Trump by 8.2%, and before that, it had voted for him by 9.4%. So while the country shifted heavily towards the Democrats, heavily towards the left, Iowa remained relatively stagnant. It really didn't trend all that much to the right. It really stayed with Donald Trump. They are big Donald Trump fans. So going into 2024, knowing 2024 will be more Republican than 2022, we knew that Iowa wouldn't be competitive. But that's not the point. The point is his 18-point lead. But before we even get to that, we have to talk about the fact that this is a poll from the Des Moines Register in partnership with Ann Selzer. Ann Selzer is the most accurate pollster in the nation. She only polls the state of Iowa, and she gets it almost spot on every single time. For example, in the 2020 presidential election. Now, I'll mind you, Iowa had voted for Trump in 2016, as I mentioned, by 9.4%. However, going into 2020, the polls were indicating that it would be competitive. Quinnipiac, a pretty accurate pollster, known as being, one of the most accurate in America, had Donald Trump up by only 1% right before Election Day. And then we have Emerson, Donald Trump only up by 1. We had a Democratic pollster actually showing Biden ahead in the state of Iowa. However, the one outlier here was the Des Moines Register poll. It had Trump up 7. You see that Biden was ahead by 1, Trump up by 2, by 1, and then you had this Trump by 7 poll. And what do you know? The final results, Donald Trump won by 8.2%. It was basically spot on. It was in the margin of error with only an 814 respondents. Even with that low number, they got it to almost exactly, on the spread, on the actual results. They predicted Trump would win by 7. He won by 8.2. No other poll was even close here. Now, when this poll came out, very few even believed it, and it actually proved to be true. Again, Donald Trump would go on to win by a very similar margin, when no one expected him to. Not to mention the 2024, an even more recent example, in the Iowa caucuses. This is the opposite example. The polls were overestimating Donald Trump here. We see that the Des Moines Register poll, in partnership with Ann Selzer and NBC News here, had Donald Trump up by 28%. He ended up winning by 29.7, a 1.7 spread. Basically spot on within the margin of error, and it was the closest of all of these polls. It was the closest. So the point is, Ann Selzer and the Des Moines Register are known for conducting on-point polling, polling samples. They always get it spot on. So we can, use this to look at the 2024 election, because nothing is showing anything like this 18-point lead, a huge 18-point lead for Donald Trump here. Now, not the narrative, but the common consensus, really, among most political analysis has been that the polls are at least slightly overestimating Donald Trump. That the polls, with him leading in Minnesota now, with him leading in Virginia, as well as all of the swing states, it looked like the polls were a bit overestimating Donald Trump, and Biden would at least win some of these states that the polls currently show Donald Trump ahead in. But this poll with Trump up by 18, yes, it's just Iowa. Yes, it's just one state. We don't have these polls. We don't have Selzer polls in every swing state. However, this is a much larger margin for Donald Trump than any other poll. So the question then becomes, the narrative has been that, the polls are just slightly overestimating Donald Trump, or at least slightly overestimating, maybe majorly overestimating Donald Trump. But what if they're underestimating him? Because, we can use the Des Moines Register and Selzer poll to our advantage to predict this 2024 election, even if it's just Iowa. Now, I don't know if I have it up. I really should have pulled it up. But, here it is. This is just one poll here. I don't know about the average here. But no other poll from the state of Iowa. There have been very few. We have very few polls from the state of Iowa, but none show Donald Trump up by 18. They show him up by much less. So if Donald Trump can actually hold this 18-point performance, he would be way overestimating than what the polls are currently predicting. Now, this doesn't go for every state, I'll mind you. The electorate and the polling in Iowa is so much different than the electorate and polling and voting and everything about Arizona or Nevada or even Pennsylvania, despite its relative close proximity. That being said, there are a couple states where it matters so much. When you look at the electoral map in 2024, you see that we have two pretty major, it's looking like, swing states in the 2024 election, bordering Iowa, that being Minnesota and Wisconsin. Both of them border Iowa. They have very similar values when it comes to voting. And they're very similar politically. Even though Iowa is more Republican than these two states, it still definitely, absolutely helps us predict who would win Minnesota and Wisconsin. And I don't have the polling up, unfortunately. But what you see in both these states is that Donald Trump already leads. He already leads. So, if Donald Trump, is winning by 18% in the state of Iowa, that is a 10-point not overperformance, but improvement from his 2020 margin. He won it by 8 in 2020. If he can win it by 18, that is him doing 10% better than 2020. Now, look at just nearby. In Minnesota, imagine that effect, a 10-point shift, first of all, as the nation as a whole. Arizona, all the traditional swing states, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, would all flip to Trump easily. Virginia, Biden would win by 0.1%. New Mexico would stay with Biden by 0.8%, but New Hampshire would flip to Trump. Maine would flip to Trump. Nebraska's second would flip to Trump. Minnesota would flip to Donald Trump. So, especially with these two states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, both states, the polls already show that Donald Trump is ahead very narrowly in both of them. But on average, in both of these states, Donald Trump is slightly ahead of Joe Biden, very narrowly. But when you've got these polls from Iowa, if Donald Trump, it just doesn't make sense. If Donald Trump is doing 10 points better in neighboring Iowa, he is going to do somewhere very near that in Minnesota and Wisconsin. There's no way around it. The trend from 2020 to 2024 cannot be that much different in Iowa than it is from Minnesota and Wisconsin. American elections don't work like that. Really, no other state. If Iowa's trending 10 points to the right, then it would be difficult to see really any states not trend somewhere near that as well, because it just doesn't work like that. When there's a trend in the United States overall, it's about the same type. Substantially, it's the same trend nationwide, and especially in a region like the Midwest, Iowa. We could expect Minnesota and Wisconsin, definitely neighboring states, but then you move further out in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, more importantly, not really the Midwest, but the Rust Belt, so critical in American elections. If Iowa's trending 10 points to the right, Michigan is an easy flip Biden only won it by 3%. Pennsylvania is an even easier flip. Biden only won it by 1% in 2020. So this is huge. Even though it is Iowa, it is huge because Ann Selzer is spot on. We go through this every election cycle, and it's like, ooh, will she be right again? This seems kind of outrageous like it was in 2020. 2020 seemed outrageous. It didn't seem like Donald Trump could possibly win Iowa by 7, looking at all of the data. However, he won it by even more in the end. So Ann Selzer is always spot on. That has been proven time and time again. So we can really expect, if the election were held tomorrow, for Donald Trump to win by 18%. I really think that. Maybe something a little less, but right around there, 15 to 18%. So, if Iowa is trending 10 points to the right, the nation as a whole really will follow. Minnesota could fall, probably not, but Wisconsin definitely. Michigan, honestly, it's looking likely. Pennsylvania looking very likely. And already, he has surpassed 270 electoral votes. So very interesting to see how this plays out. But Ann Selzer is a very good indicator in presidential elections of how things are going for each candidate. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and drop a like, and also leave a comment to let me hear your thoughts and ideas. Again, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.